Here we go. We're live. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of NX Office Hours, the last one of the year. We were supposed to have Juri on today, but unfortunately, Yuri's out sick today. So Rarish, being the awesome superstar engineer he is, jumped in, and I'm super appreciative for that. So, Rarish, do you want to introduce yourself? Say hi to everyone.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Yeah, this is my first office hours. So yeah, thanks a lot, Zack, for inviting me, having me on. So I'm radish. You can kind of think about it's. I don't know if it's pronounced. Like I always tell people, it's like the vegetable radish with an R in the middle. I don't know. I don't know if you want to use that, but yeah, it's. I live in Scotland. I moved here 10 years ago. I'm still waiting for that Scottish accent, hoping one day I'll wake up with it. But yeah, I've been with Narwhal for almost a year now, joined in January, worked a bit on NX in the beginning, but now I'm mostly spending time on NX Cloud and making content. So workshops, videos, and of course, helping some of our clients with NX. But yeah, looking forward to today and hearing your questions.
Cool. Well, very cool. We're starting off today with just a quick chat about modern Angular. So I'm going to throw some links into the chat here. Let's start with this is our official page on it. Let's highlight that real quick. So if you check out on our docs page, we have I guess like a little promo page for modern Angular, just promoting NX as a great resource for Angular in general. I saw recently, actually, I don't have a link to it, but there's a poll about people using Angular. Do you use NX or not? And I think 80% of all people said they either use NX or wish they could. So that was pretty encouraging to see. And modern Angular is a lot of the reason behind that. And Rarish actually has an amazing video specifically on this. I'm going to paste here that he did. So yeah, after this, maybe check it out. It's a really cool. Yeah, it's weird just linking to another video while we're in the middle of a live thing. But yeah, it's a great video just on how you can take Angular has a lot of really cool stuff already packaged in with it. But it's like, to me, it always seems like the circle isn't quite closed, and part of that may be on purpose, as they're already taking on a large workload, doing a whole framework. So leaving some nodes open to close the circle may be intentional there. But I think NX really comes a long way in trying to close that circle. And I think Rarish's video really does a good job of showing some of that. And I'll throw into, we have a blog from Victor, just talking about modern Angular as well. So you can check that out too if you prefer to just read through something. And I think that links to the video as well. So
yeah, I think that's a good point you made about how what things Angular is really good at focusing on. And actually that blog post you linked to from Victor, I think it also links to a post also by Victor, which is Angular is an onion, which goes into detail about like that point you made about here are some of the things that Angular and its team are really good at focusing on, but here are also some things where the community can help out. And yeah, I think modern Angular is an attempt at trying to complete that circle and add modern tooling.
Yeah. So just breaking it down into the pieces, kind of the way we separated this out in terms of I don't know if modern Angular there's not anything actual about NX. It's more of like a marketing thing saying this is stuff we already do, but it really completes that circle, I think, like I said. So we get into like testing tools such as and Angular itself will come with Karma and Protractor, which are fine tools, but I think Jest and Cypress are kind of better alternatives there. And NX will give you a way to painlessly migrate over to them. So I think there's also, if you look at our community plugins, if you are migrating an existing set of tests over, either from Cypress or from Karma, I think there's some third-party plugins for making that migration a little smoother. I think there's schematics in there that will get you part of the way at least. I'd be surprised if they can get you all the way to just bring a schematic and you're done. But yeah, we try to be as helpful as possible with that, and the community's really stepped up and providing some cool tools for that as well. So thanks everyone. It's awesome to see all the community involvement. So yeah,
thank you. And yeah, I mean, just as it's really fast, also has some really good. You can look up files by a regex pattern. I think you can do some really advanced. It has some really advanced watch modes as well, but also Cypress. It's just such a pleasure to work with, and it's so it's actually fun, and it has these it just flows. When you try to define the interactions, hey, get this element, and you can get it by text content, you can get it by class name, you can add your own data attributes, and then you can click on it, wait for this other action. It's nice to read and to write, and it has some very advanced features to support that as well. So you can record failures, I think. So even on CI, if something fails, it can take a screenshot, it can take a video of that failure. So yeah, I think it's just an incredible tool. And when you generate an app, a new app with some of our Angular schematics, it just adds by default some Cypress tests for that app, and everything is wired in. So it just runs your app. It targets your component. You can just be productive immediately and just start writing tests.
Absolutely. And yeah, test-driven development. So that sort of idea where you write your tests first and then develop the actual feature itself. I don't know if I've heard of this and I thought, okay, maybe that's a cool idea, but practically doesn't seem that plausible, I guess maybe we could say. But I think when you have some stuff together with Cypress and just the ease that comes with that, and also if you have a situation where you have your front end and your back end in an NX workspace, it actually becomes very plausible and very practical, I think, to actually do test-driven development and to kind of have that level of confidence coming from end-to-end tests. So I'm a big proponent of that stuff. Another big thing that we want to plug, especially now, with Angular 11 out, is the linting tools. And Lars Nielsen has been harping about this for a long time because TS lint is officially deprecated soon, I think, maybe now. I don't know. I think it was December of 2020 that it was deprecated. I don't even know because it doesn't matter to us because we have ESLint now, and that's not deprecated. So yeah, we have, so ESLint is a big part of that modern Angular piece. So again, filling out that circle, giving maybe the next gen, or at least a viable version of linting that's not deprecated. So and this comes in, we have ESLint, and also now with Angular 11, Angular-ESLint will now come pre-installed and configured with a fresh install of Angular stuff. And let me throw up, we're going to throw up Lars's tweet to this. Lars is getting some free press here. Here's a tweet that Lars posted about taking an existing, so if you migrated from an existing NX10 to a upgrading to NX11, you can follow these steps to go from TSLint to ESLint and get the Angular ESLint rules configured. And I'm going to throw this article that Lars sent me to, also from Lars, that was the ultimate migration guide for all of this stuff. So very great resources. Always appreciative to Lars for this cool stuff he does. And yeah, check out his new blog here too. This is Angular at dev.to. Very cool stuff there in general. So
yeah, exactly. No, that's a really in-depth article from Lars, and it's super appreciated.
Yeah.
I can see how it's going to be useful because he covers like going from an empty workspace, going from starting up like a new workspace with the Angular preset, going from migrating from an existing workspace. So yeah, that's it's super in depth.
Yeah. And of course, we would be remiss to not thank James Henry for all the awesome work he's done on ESLint and specifically for ESLint Angular 2 for this new Angular 11 stuff. So, James, thank you so much. We appreciate all your work on the linting. I think it helps a lot of people. So, James is, I think he's currently contracting with Narwhal still, so we still kind of have some connections to James, but yeah, always great to have him around. Moving on from linting, the next one, and this is kind of the interesting one, is component design tools with Storybook, which is a really cool. So it's a set of schematics really. So this was actually based on some client work I had originally taken on. That was just building some schematics for, okay, let's create a new component, but in doing so, let's set up Storybook stuff for it. And so I did some client work on this, and then I handed this off to Isaac, who took it and made it into its own package, which was really cool to see it go from that to like this generic thing that everyone can kind of benefit from. So very cool to see that. It's NX or Narwhal Storybook is a set of schematics that will, kind of do what we said. You can run it against an existing component, and it will kind of set up a story for you. And there's also some ways to init like a collection of stories, and that will do some really cool stuff in terms of like creating your own Storybook app for that. And we also integrate with Cypress as well. So once you've created that app, not only can you run it in isolation to see like your stories or your little test beds for the component, you can also run Cypress against that running app and do specific tests. It's almost like doing unit tests on the component, but with an end-to-end strategy and using the Cypress tools, which I think is actually really powerful. So. Yeah,
it's really nice how you can because you can set up Storybook to like to configure your components. So all the different inputs your component has, you can set up Storybook so you can just manually edit those different inputs. But then you can also set up Cypress via the URL. For example, you can have different values for all the different inputs for your component. So it's a really nice way to test your component like in isolation without actually bootstrapping your whole app around it. You can just launch your component and Cypress is going to test it like a real user. So it's going to click on it and just trigger the actual events and see if your component reacts to them. So,
yeah, very cool. We're going to take most of these questions. Feel free to ask questions now, and we'll kind of like build up a backlog and address them once we get through some of the ones that was asked via our form. I did want to just highlight this one real quickly though, because it's on topic. Is it possible to set up a Storybook for web components, i.e., no Angular or React? I believe it is. I'm honestly not 100% sure. I've never. So I know we have the libraries set up to do just NX with web components, and I assume that this would work with our Storybook stuff. But I haven't actually tried it to find out. But I believe you should be able to, set up it similarly as you would with Angular or React. So, yeah. Sorry, I couldn't be more solid with that. Raj, have you maybe worked with just the raw web components before?
No, I haven't. I was thinking about that. So I know we have React and Angular flavors for our Storybook plugin, but I've never seen it running with web components. So yeah, that might be. Yeah, I'd be interested about that as well. And if not, yeah, we could. It would be a good thing to add.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for the question. And yeah, like I said, keep asking questions. I already saw some stuff about migrating to 11, so we'll try to grab all those questions when we get there, and we'll try to do as best we can with those. Going forward with modern Angular stuff though. So Storybook, awesome. I think Storybook, especially the connection of Storybook and Cypress and Angular. Like that's really what I was thinking of in terms of like completing that circle. So very cool to see those come in and have that support. And yeah, and NX is really just connecting those dots. Like a lot of times we get questions here about, I think we'll address some later too, that are about some of the specific tools we use. And yeah, it's kind of cool to see those questions because it shows everyone's working with this, but a lot of it is just us connecting the dots between existing tools. So, but hopefully doing it in a way that's very seamless. So yeah, definitely want to give the maintainers of these specific tools their due. Like Storybook is its own project, Cypress is its own project. We just kind of graciously take their work and put it into NX and yeah, hopefully make a good experience for everyone. So yeah. Also mentioned in our sort of modern Angular thing is modern state management frameworks. So we're talking about mainly NGRX. And so we have some support for like NGRX schematics that you can run to like set up some initial NGRX stuff, but there's not a lot of actual integration there. But we do have Brandon Roberts on the team and Wes Grimes on the team. We're part of the NGRX core team, and where I think a lot of Narwhalians are very. I know I'm obsessed with NGRX. I would not want to do state management without it. So yeah, it's very cool to see that. And even without like specific integrations written for NGRX, it feels like it kind of works seamlessly especially with NX, where you can have like separate libraries and break them out to have NGRX as part of your libs. So yeah, Raj, anything to add there?
No, I think you said it all. Yeah, no, I think NGRX is an amazing lib, and yeah, we have Brandon and Wes making sure its its support is good in NX. Yeah, no, I think that's good.
Very cool. Next 2 points on modern Angular are the modern CLI and computation caching. I think for the most part, like it's closing that circle has been accomplished by the other points in the node. These are more just improvements on top of that. So a modern CLI will give you that's the NX CLI that's pretty much just put on top of the Angular CLI and can give you some additional benefits from that, including computation caching, which is Rars has another video on that, which I think is amazing, where you showed your old laptop and your current laptop. And you ran the test the first time on your good laptop with all the RAM, and it took, I don't know, like 10 minutes. And then you ran it on your very slow laptop and ran the tests. And because they were cached, it happened instantly. And that was super cool to see. I guess not instantly. I guess it still had to download the results of those tests from the cloud. But
it still had to download, yeah, because I had like such a long output, because that's why it took maybe 20 minutes for the first command to run.
Yeah.
So it still took about 10 seconds to run on the second one, just to download and replay all the output. But yeah, it's a huge difference. And yeah, I tried to do the whole video, well, not the whole video, but the first part of the video in one take. Just so I can feel like, hey, it's building, and in real time, look at the second laptop.
Yeah, no, it was super cool to see with you setting the timer on your phone and putting your phone next to your laptop to prove it. I thought that was good. That was good theater for sure. I like that a lot. I just threw up the link for NX Cloud. So this is if you're just running NX by yourself, like for a pet project, you'll get computation caching locally for your own machine. But if you want to set up NX Cloud, which now it will ask you that when you create a new workspace, and it'll like just configure itself for you and get itself set up initially. With the cloud, you can do stuff like Raresh was doing. If you have 2 dev computers, you can like share the cache that way. Or if you have a team, that's obviously where it becomes most helpful. Or CI pipelines. You pretty much, it's kind of like a shared history that you share between all of your different computers, based off of like your source code and your dependencies, and based on those things, have we ever run this command before? In that case, no need to run it again. We've already cached it and put it in the cloud for you. So it's all pretty seamless. Even if you don't use the the automated stuff we have set up when you run the create an NX workspace script. It's pretty much just taking your key and plugging it into your workspace.json file or Angular JSON file, or if you're doing it in CI/CD, setting that as a environment variable on your pipeline. So.
Yeah, I think the setup is really easy because you just initialize it, and then you just check in the change, you push it, and then when everybody else pulls the changes, they're just gonna start seeing these cached outputs immediately. Like if there is obviously if there is something there, but all the other developers in your team, like they're not gonna have to change their workflow. They're not gonna technically have to know that this has been even set up. Like they'll probably know, but they're not going to change how they run commands. They're just going to see their commands becoming quicker suddenly.
Yeah.
Without any change. So yeah.
Yeah, and we'll show a little thing in the console if it does come from a cache. We'll say cached output to show. It may be surprising to some people if tests immediately complete.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do have some indicators there, and also of course if you're part of a larger organization and you need you're squeamish about putting stuff in the cloud, we also have an on-prem solution, and you can find out more about that from this link. So. Yeah, check it out. Hopefully is super helpful in some use cases. So yeah. And
Can I
go
just
ahead.
start with something, just going back a bit to the modern CLI? Just wanted to add a point about NX, it also brings this consistency to your workspace. So whenever you create a new Angular app, you can even add backend APIs in your workspace. But even if you have multiple Angular apps, they might be configured in different ways. They might have different options. They might use different build tooling under the hood. But NX tries to abstract all of that away into things like the build keyword. So for example, in an NX workspace, if you want to build all the apps, usually you'll just run NX run menu target build, right? And that's going to build all of the apps in your workspace. You can also run NX affected build. So that is, and that's super powerful, especially for somebody from DevOps, for example. They're not going to have to know like the nuances of the different frameworks you're using within your workspace. They're not going to have to know, I don't know, the Angular CLI and its options, or I don't know, Next.js CLI. They can just call NX affected build, for example, and they know that's going to work. So I think that's also a big advantage of how NX tries to push this consistency with most tooling that you use, like testing or end-to-end or linting or building.
Yeah, not specific to Angular, I don't think, but one of the things I like most about NX is like if there's like a third-party plugin we have for Vue, and I want to give Vue a try, and it made it much more welcoming to just be able to run schematics and serve the app like I would with Angular. Made it very, very nice, and it brought that level of, well, yes, I'm working with a different framework now, but it doesn't feel like it. At least in terms of like the pain points of, well, how do I structure my app? How do I serve my app? How do I run different stuff against my app? So, yeah, cool. So yeah, that's pretty much all the different points of modern Angular. Feel free to check out the links above if you want to check it out some more, and to make sure you go and check out Raj's video and like it, or whatever you do on YouTube these days. It's a really cool resource, I think. But yeah, before we jump into questions, we also wanted to talk about NX11 really quick. We did most of our stream last time about NX11 and Angular 11, so didn't want to put up too much of that because I think we covered it mostly last time. But I'm pasting now a link. We updated our docs a little bit to updating NX because there's some specific things for going from NX10 to NX11 that we wanted to call out, and we added that to the docs here. So yeah, hopefully that will help with some of these. I'll look to see if we can grab some of the upgrading NX questions I've seen as well. So I saw Jorge had a question. Jorge, if you want to give some more details as what the problems are, we'll try to address them now if you're still listening. And there were plans for an official Java Kotlin plugin for NX11. Any updates there? So we are using Kotlin on one of our internal APIs, and there were plans to release the stuff we've been working on as an official plugin for 11, but we didn't have the resources to have that out. I'm not sure if it's still on our plans or not, but unfortunately it didn't make it into 11. So we are using it internally, but it's not ready to be exposed externally. And of course, if anyone wants to do like a community plugin for it, and there's some examples of community plugins for other languages already. Like there's a Python one done by Diana that you could maybe look at if you want to kind of incorporate some of those same ideas there, and maybe we could do some support for that way. But yeah, no, unfortunately, it did not release with 11. I guess that's the bottom line on that one. So let's go ahead, Raj. Sorry.
There's that's a good point about the plugins, and there's also really simple to use Go plugin written by Bram. So that's so I tried that. Like it's super easy to use. It works. You can have like you can just run a Go application inside your NX workspace, and a lot of the things. So if you really want to try this out, you can always set up. You can always use the run commands builder, and just like pass in any command that you would normally use to launch your Java or Kotlin app or to build it. So you can always try that out and see how it works. The biggest problems which are not supported yet are the dependency graph. So there's no way for NX to know about the dependency graph involving your Java or Kotlin app.
Yeah. Well, so with a lot of the dependency graph, which is like one of the most powerful things of NX, is predicated on things being in JavaScript and knowing about those syntax and those rules. In some ways that's the hardest thing about bringing a new language in is, well, we either need to figure out some way of determining those things for the other language and building that into our tree. But you can still do some things like setting up implicit dependencies. At least then you could like manually say this is how the dependencies should work between libraries or projects. So you can still do a little bit of that. I think that's what most of our community plugins do. I don't think there's many that go into actually building an accurate dependency graph tree. But like Raj was saying, even without that, you can still get like a lot of the benefits of having the consistent CLI just from using the run commands. Executor is what we're calling it now. We'll get into that later. But it's just a way of like running something like you would on a command line, but from inside of the CLI. So yeah. In addition to migrating to NX11, we threw up the docs there, and the other thing we wanted to mention is it introduced the NX dev kit, which is actually so before we had been using the Angular dev kit, and obviously that's a little bit problematic for people who wanted to use React. Not that there's anything like wrong with it, but you don't want I don't know, you don't want to be working with the enemy, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, the NX dev kit now will let you create builders and expose some utility functions for we're calling them executors and generators. So yeah, you can build those now pretty easily without using the Angular dev kit, instead using like an NX dev kit for that. So builders, builders and schematics, the nomenclature there we had always kind of thought was a little problematic. So since we were adding some support for our own dev kit, we took the impetus to go ahead and rename them. So builders are now executors, which seems like a better word to us because builders imply you're building something. And it doesn't really follow that serving, you're not, well, I guess you're kind of building something, but you're continuously building it as you go along and watching for changes and testing. I guess you're kind of building testing output, but I don't know. Executors sounded like a better phrase for doing that kind of stuff. And schematics too. I guess if you're familiar with Angular, schematic is, oh, okay, I know what that is. But to someone in another framework or another language, even that's not immediately apparent what it is. And schematics are essentially code gen, so we decided to name them generators instead. So we'll be working with that. We've got some docs that we updated. I'll go ahead and post this one link. So if you have some custom builders that you're using previously, there's a little bit of an adjustment you can do to turn that builder into an NX executor. Pretty much the big difference is you're just not currying along context with it, and you just log with like console.log and stuff like that. So yeah, check out the link if anyone's interested on that. And let's see. I'm going to try to scan for any questions pertinent to this, Raj, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, just a quick thing about that. So none of those changes are breaking, so it still supports everything. But yeah, we're just we do have some migrations that are moving you towards that. If you try to upgrade to NX11, you will see some of your workspace schematics changing to generators, but they're not breaking. So none of the existing plugins should be breaking.
And so we had the question on executor code live yet, or is that still work in progress? So we do have our executors running your builder as an NX executor now works. So that is live. There are still a number of places in NX where we're still using the Angular dev kit though. So we're still in the process of migrating everything over to use this stuff. And so it's live. It's maybe not fully featured yet. There may be some utility functions that we don't have good replacements for provided from the Angular dev kit. So yeah, it's go ahead and use it, and maybe open issues if you come across some stuff, and there may be some stuff that's missing there. So that's maybe the word on there. Thanks, Devin, for the question. But yeah, that's pretty much all the pre-packaged stuff we wanted to talk about. We'll jump into questions now that we got. If you look at the video description, there's a link there. You can go ahead and feel free to ask some more questions to that link for the next time, and we'll answer them then. But yeah, I'll go ahead and throw up our first question that we got, and we're hiding the emails for now, just because we didn't want to throw out people's emails if they didn't feel comfortable with it. But you know who you are if you ask this question. I guess we'll leave it at that. So the question is, can I do tests based on a certain criteria, cross-cutting all my libs, but without running all tests? So the example being something like NX test, and then passing a filter option with form, and then test everything with a form tag. And yeah. Inside of the describe, okay, yeah, sorry, it looks like StreamYard broke this up into 2 comments, and that's fine. But yeah, so the idea here is pretty much, what if there's some subset of tests that we want to do a specific test run against, using, I would assume using just, that's actually an assumption here. I guess the question doesn't ask that explicitly, but I want to add a note for this really quick that just NX libs are like the atomic unit in an NX workspace. So like, I guess if we're thinking about like, what is this? I guess this is like chemistry. Like an atom is a self-contained unit, and there's smaller pieces to that, like the electrons and whatever. So I guess those would be analogous to like functions or interfaces or classes being exported from it. But sort of the lib should encapsulate those things, and yeah, that's what NX is set up to look at in terms of dependency graphing and stuff like that. So it's always a possibility that we could do something. You could do something where if you wanted these things together, you could create your own lib for this. But yeah, there's some tagging functionality native to Jest, because again, we'd probably be using Jest for these. And so there was a Jest issue and a package we wanted to link to, just doing some quick Googling while we were prepping for this, that I'm posting now. So this may be helpful for this specific use case in terms of creating a group of tests you'd like to run at the same time. And yeah, could be helpful there. Again, we can't take any credit for that. That's all a Jest, but yeah, you could probably do either an executor or just using a run command thing that could go in and do this behind the scenes for you just from running something with the CLI. And yeah, Raj, do you want to add anything on that, maybe with Cypress or anything too?
Yeah. So if I'm not sure if there's anything for Jest, it might be possible, but for example, for Cypress, if you Google Cypress tagged tests, and this is nothing specific to NX, but you can, there is, I think there's a repo out there built by Gleb, and it currently supports just JavaScript. I think there's another one for TypeScript as well, but it essentially allows you to add tags within your it blocks or your describe blocks, and then Cypress will only run the tests with a specific tag, or that are excluding a specific tag. So that's one thing. I don't know if there's something similar for Jest. I know there's something like that for Cypress. There's also another thing I wanted to add, just on a more general note. You can always build a script. So, for example, when there's this blog article by Victor where he explores how to split up running projects across different agents on your CI. So yeah, thanks Zack for posting the link. And part of that article, like one takeaway, is that you can build your own script and you can try to split up the projects in your workspace, just put them in whatever buckets you want. And then you can invoke the NX run many, target test build or end-to-end, whatever you want, and then you can pass in an option of projects. You can pass in a list of which projects you want to run with that target. So yeah, that's if you read more about that article, like, it shows you how you can do that, how you can split up your projects by a specific criteria, and then just run all those different buckets, run a specific target across those different buckets.
There you go. Cool. So yeah, thanks, Raj. And as we're going through these, we're kind of going to go through the pre-asked questions first. But like I said, keep asking them. We'll look to circle back and hit all the questions in chat by the time we're done. So I'm going to post our next question here. So the question is, I'm trying to build a pet project. It's a Node.js/Express one. My project will contain a couple CLI scripts. What's a good way to include those CLI scripts to app build? So Raj, you want to grab this one?
Yeah, so this would be, if I'm understanding the question correctly, you would like to run some CLI scripts before or after, or somewhere in the build process. So the run commands builder is actually a really good use case for something like this, because you can invoke the build, but you can also give it like an array of commands to run so when you would normally do NX build your project, you can actually make it target this run commands builder, which and you can pass it an array of different commands. So you can pass it different CLI scripts, and you can customize the order in which those scripts run. And at some point, you can also invoke the normal build for your project. But yeah, like the run command is really powerful because you can tell it to run those scripts in parallel. I'm assuming in your case, you might want to set that to false, so they run in a specific order. But yeah, it's really powerful. You can also set a working directory. you can even, I think you can even import a specific environment file. So if your scripts rely on some specific environment variables, you can tell the run commands builder to load those specific environment variables before executing your scripts. So yeah, it's really powerful.
Yeah. Also, just in case someone is using something they like, if they're using node package scripts, that's actually something we do in our internal stuff. Sometimes is we'll use NPS in addition to our own builders, and some of that's just a convenience thing of we had something working before, let's just use NPS, and that'll work just fine with NX as well if you prefer using NPS or some similar tool as well. So that's also an option available to people.
Yeah, so NPS is a tool that's just for, if folks haven't heard of it, it's just a tool for if your package.json scripts, npm scripts, end up being too crazy, you can move all of them to this JavaScript file and just kind of nest them nicely. So you can nest under your project, you can nest your build scripts, and then you can have sub build scripts for that. So yeah, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and I think it'll give you some utilities too for like running in parallel versus running sequentially, similar to like you can do in run commands too. So yeah, kind of like a like for like almost there. But yeah, there's some better things you can get out of NX because you'll get caching then with that built in. So yeah, kind of cool there. Moving on to our next question. So this is one, I think we've gotten this in the past. This was the question verbatim. So I'm assuming what we're looking for is this is almost like a feature request, looking for semantic release versioning. So to answer this question though, NX is actually purposely versioning agnostic. So we don't want to force people into a certain way of versioning or another. There are though some third-party plugins and third-party utilities that are specifically built for NX where they support semantic versioning and other things. So this is also run by bman by Brahm, the same guy who did the Go plugin for us. So you can check out nxpm.dev, and this is nxpm is NX package managing. So this is a great tool for wanting to do something like semantic release versioning or canary releases. That was a question we had received last time. So yeah, this is something that could help you for those. And of course, if you wanted to have your own versioning system, you could always implement that yourself, or do like Bram did and spin it up into a cool library and share that with the community, and we'd be very appreciative for that. So thank you. Thanks for the question too. Jumping into our next one. So this is maybe on a similar note. How to manage application versions within a monorepo when using affected build only builds one application, leaving the others behind in terms of a version. Also, when is the next office hours? So the second half of the question, the next office hours are right now. But yeah, our next one following this will be, we're scheduled right now for January 10th. So we'll be looking to do this, and we're trying to do this on a more regular cadence of about twice a week. So not twice a week, I'm sorry, twice a month. So about every other week. And so yeah, next one will be January 10th, and we'll keep you updated from that. But as far as the versioning part of the question goes, Raj, do you want to actually take that to start?
Yeah, I can. I mean, I guess I guess I would try to ask like a bit more clarification around this. But my first assumption would be is the question around, so if you only run affected, that's only gonna, like, by definition, it's only gonna build, for example, only your affected projects. So what about the rest? Like, how do you actually version the rest? So that's where I would maybe ask for a bit more context, because if they've not been changed, would you maybe want the versions to stay the same and actually not worry about the versions at that point, and maybe just increment the versions for the projects that you're actually publishing because they have changed? So if something hasn't changed, maybe you don't need to deploy it and you don't need to increment the version. But yeah, that's kind of how I understood it. I don't know, Zach, if you had other.
Yeah, well, I think rereading the question, I tend to make the same assumptions you did, Raj. So yeah, that's a good point. So if you're passing the affected option to your build or to your build command, you wouldn't build a new one, so you probably wouldn't want to version it. I guess if you did still want to keep things on the same numbered release, maybe you could do something like that if you wanted, but I would think you wouldn't want to do that, because then it would seem like there's been some changes between this and this, and there actually haven't. So yeah, I think you probably want to do that. I had mentioned when we were looking through this question though, just again, NX is purposely like versioning and release numbering agnostic. So for something like this too, you probably just want to manage some of these versioning concerns with just a Git strategy. So if you're doing like trunk based strategy, you could have different branches for your different releases, and that way, if you ever wanted to at some point in the future, you can check out a previous branch numbered at a certain release, and you'd kind of get the benefit of let's go to things at the point of this release, and you can still run an application even if it wasn't affected that way, just by checking out that version or that snapshot, I guess, of your code base. So yeah. Thanks for the question. And again, if we're not answering it, or if we made the wrong assumptions, feel free to ask again down below, and we'll get to it. Oh, and before I jump into the next one, Lars says hello. Lars, hey, we plugged your tweets and your article earlier. Sorry if you missed it, but yeah, thanks so much for that work you did on giving people guides for migrating to ESLint. Super helpful, and to NX11. So thanks, Lars. So yeah, let's throw up the next question here. So this was a question. This would have been really good to have to have Juri on. Unfortunately, he's out sick today because he does a lot of stuff with NG Packager. I have not done that much with it. Rarish, have you done anything with it in the past?
No, I haven't. I was gonna tackle mostly this from like linting tag perspective. I don't know if the question is around that, but yeah, you can assign multiple scopes, like lint scopes, to a specific lib, and then you can define like your linting and your module boundaries around those different scopes, and it does work with that. I'm not aware of a way to print these scopes though. So, but you can definitely, there is the command nx print affected, and it allows you to, so that's going to print all of the projects, all of the apps and libs that have been affected by a change. So I don't know if there's a way for you to build a script that takes the output from that and then goes and queries all the, for all the different scopes for those apps that have been affected.
Good deal. Yeah, I would go back to and I haven't worked with NG Packager very much at all, but I would maybe go back to the point we made earlier about a lib or a project being an atomic piece, and maybe thinking about breaking your scopes into libs as well. So even if there is an additional mechanism for creating smaller scope inside of a lib, maybe still just because you're working under NX, breaking that scope out into its own lib too may be an option. I'm not familiar enough with the specifics of this to say if that's viable or not, but maybe something worth thinking about. So yeah, thanks for the question, and I will make a note to ask Juri about this too, and maybe we can reach out to you later if we get a better answer than that for someone who's very familiar with NG Packager. We'll jump to the next question now though, and here you go. So this is kind of a fun question. We a lot of times we get like these specific ones, but this was really cool. Juri, why don't you start with it, and then I'll give some of my thoughts.
Yeah. So yeah, again, like super fun question. Yeah, thanks for this. And Yeah, so like I was just thinking about this. So some of the things that maybe some devs or some teams don't know about is the move and remove schematics. So because it's so easy to create libs in an NX workspace, but sometimes people are afraid. For example, like you like you might want to be extra safe, and just in case this lib needs to be shared, I'll just put it in the shared folder. But a lot of the times, maybe just your team needs it. So in that case, you can just create it just for your team, for example, or just for a specific scope. And if later you decide that, hey, maybe I need to move this, maybe this should be part of a shared scope, you can easily invoke just the NX generate move schematic, and that's gonna update everything. So like the first time I used it, like I was so impressed. Like I immediately went to Joanna, like who developed this, and like I thanked her, like, hey, this is so powerful because it updates your TypeScript imports, it updates it just updates everything you need. You might need to go ahead and do some extra cleanup, like with the, for example, the lint tags. So it doesn't do that because those are custom for your workspace and your team. But it does take care of 90% of the work.
Yeah. So we had been wanting to do this for a while. I remember when so Johanna came on, I think it was like in her first week, she had published this move/remove schematic, and we were like, yes. It was so cool because it was always something we had wanted to do, but it was like, oh, there's probably a lot of stuff we need to cover there. And so we were kind of like squeamish to tackle it. But yeah, Johanna really knocked that one out of the park in my mind. So yeah, I use it all the time now. It's super helpful just for like renaming renaming a lib2, which before was a real pain. So yeah, super props to Johanna for that. And yeah, did you want to do any more suggestions on this?
Yeah, I'll just do the like two quick ones. So another one is just workspace schematics. You can just use the NX generate workspace schematic and or generator, and you can generate like a new so you can just I think they're called now workspace generators, and honestly they're so powerful. So if you find yourself generating a lot of libs and then adding ngrx, or if you find yourself generating a lot of libs and adding storybook after that, just you can move all of that into a custom generator, and you can use utilities like invoking external schematics, and you can just define which schematics you want invoked one after the other, and you can customize what options get passed to these schematics by default, so you don't have to pass them in each time. So they're huge time savers once you get comfortable using them.
Yeah, especially for workspace schematics, it seems like using NX workspace schematics, you can kind of write the schematic and only worry about that. Whereas I feel like if you're not using workspace schematics, sometimes it's like, well, now I have the problem of figuring out exactly how do I write and build and deploy and all this stuff with our schematics, and then run it. And so it's kind of nice to have that all that pain kind of obfuscated away, and you just like write the code gen you actually wanted to write when you set out to write a generator. So yeah. That's definitely.
I'll let you go, Zach.
Yeah. Well, so for me, and this is like a big one for me. If you've ever used NX for actual full stack, where actually your back end and your front end are in the same NX workspace, that for me, like you get a lot of NX. I think like we had talked about modern Angular. If you just want to put your front end app in there, great. I think you'll get a better experience. But there's something about the syncing those and being able to share code across those, being able to have one place where you're updating your interfaces, and so that interface changes. That's actually the interface being used by front and back end. So as soon as you change the interface, if something broke inside of your client because you changed the API or something like that. And versioning becomes much easier. You can, you just use affected, and you'll decide, do I need to build my API or do I need to build my app? Yes or no. And if so, go ahead and build it, and you can just deploy it all at once without having to all that pain of keeping separate repositories in sync between your back end and your front end. And I haven't used NX with any other languages yet, but I would assume a lot of the benefit there, even if the code sharing isn't set up, just having those things in the same place for easier deployments rather than having to keep two separate repositories in sync would be super helpful, and having all the tooling across that. Another thing I wanted to mention was just a lot of times we see NX being used on a specific project. So it's like there's a lot of monorepo tools in there. You absolutely don't need to use them. You can just use NX as kind of like a tool set platform, I guess, for just like running a single app. But prior to coming to Narwhal, I had worked in a shop where we did a lot of custom solutions, and it would just getting to the point inside of our code base where we had like a specific module for a feature that most of our clients used. It became like we had a fairly complex tree with many different apps, many different libs, and the goal was always to just be able to say, okay, we want this feature for this client, so let's just pull it off the shelf and install it. And it was very satisfying getting to that point where we were actually doing that. Just whenever we had a new client, we just create a new app for them and add that to the tree kind of, and say, well, this needs X, Y, and Z features, and just kind of drop them all into your ng module, because we're using Angular, and that's your app pretty much. So sometimes you need a custom thing and you create your own lib for that. But yeah, I think NX, there's a lot of power in that kind of use case. So even smaller shops, maybe if you're not like fully enterprise, but if you have some custom solutions like this, I think NX could be a super powerful tool for that. And Vars, did you want to mention this about NX Cloud? I'm seeing in the notes too.
Yeah. I mean, I think we could go on for ages with this question.
Like you opened up a can of worms here.
But yeah, just a quick one. Once you enable NX Cloud, you're going to start noticing these links coming up when you start running commands. So this takes you to a page so you can see this if you go to the NX repo. If you open up the pull requests, you're going to see these reports by the NX Cloud bot, but you're also going to see links when you run commands locally in NX, if you have NX Cloud enabled. And these are just so useful for sending to other developers if you want to ask for a second opinion, or you just need some help with those commands. So yeah, I didn't know I needed them, but once I have them now, like I just find them so useful, and I miss them a lot in projects that don't have them.
Good deal. Well, we're coming close to time, so we have one last question we had from before, and then we'll try to scoop up as many questions as we can. So this question was about CI/CD testing and deploying only the affected projects. I'm going to post here, this is a markdown file from one of our workshop labs that I think Raresh has done in the past. Raresh, you want to talk just a little bit more about this one?
Yeah, so if you open up that lab, it kind of shows you how a setup with using NX affected and using run commands to deploy different apps within your monorepo. So in that specific lab, if I think you can go NX, so you can git checkout, and there's a branch called final day 2, and that's going to bring all of your setup up to date. So then you can actually test that workshop out. And it shows you how you can use run commands in combination with NX affected to only deploy the apps that have actually changed. And there's a note there with explaining how, so when you do NX affected, it's ideally you want, because there's a problem. You can't just compare against the previous commit, because you might push 5 commits at a time, or you might push 10 commits up to master. So you can't always just compare NX of what should I deploy based on the previous commit. You actually want to compare against the last time you pushed, or even better, you want to compare against the last time you successfully deployed. Right? So there's a note in that workshop if you want to read more about strategies around doing that. I think that's it.
Good deal. We also wanted to share a link to so this is to Juri's React course. which has a lesson specifically on this as well. So testing and deploying only the affected projects. So check out that link. It's free, I believe. I think it's free. If I'm not, please don't hold it against me. But I believe it's free. And yeah, cool. Thanks, Raj. And this will give a more the whole course is obviously built around React, and it's free because we want more React people to get into NX, because we think it's a really helpful tool potentially for them and want to get their feedback and whatnot. But this will, if you're more into React, this could give you a more React flavor to setting everything up, or just NX in general. So yeah, super great tool there. I'm going to see if we can plow through some questions because we're running at the end of our time, but I want to get to everyone. Christian asks, is there something to help us handle better with I18N Angular functionality? So in no way is this Narwhal or NX, but I highly recommend Transloco for this. It's a tool we use on one of our client projects we work on in Narwhal, and it seems to be pretty good in terms of having all the features you would need for doing translation or internationalization. So Rars, do you have any additional things for that?
No, I was going to recommend the same library. Yeah.
Cool. Let's see. Sebastian asks, regarding versioning, I understand the intended approach is to have all projects inside the monorepo under the same global version, right? If not, how can I version apps separately? So again, I'll always fall back to edX. It tries to be versioning agnostic. I would imagine you'd want to do something with your Git, with your Git strategy to say, okay, we'll create a separate branch for each one of our releases, and that way you can still kind of determine, well, was this app actually affected for this release, or do I want to go back in time and run this specific app? That would be good. Yes, it would be the intended approach to have all projects inside your monorepo under the same global version. I think that's correct. I think that's how you'd want to be versioning your stuff. So even if it's a different app, it would have, if it's released at the same time as a parallel app because it's affected for that release, as opposed based against your previous release, you'd want those to have the same numbers, I would think. You don't have to do that, but that seems the most logical to me. You could obviously, give them completely different versions if you preferred. And that may be what you're asking here. And your versioning strategy may be different, but I think if you're using stuff prescribed by the Angular CLI, you put that somewhere in your environment to say here's the version based on this Angular application, or if you're using a different framework, just however you would version it anyways, you could just adjust that manually yourself. So I think hopefully that answers the question. If not, feel free to reach out to us too. And Rars, do you have anything to add there?
No, I think you added a lot of detail. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Sorry, I'm trying to scramble to get all these ones. Let's see. Is it possible to pass quiet or max warnings options to ESLint? Both useful from TSLint to ESLint migration. As far as I know, it is working with only the fixed option in NX10. Thanks. I'm not aware of this, unfortunately.
There's a silent option for ESLint. I don't know if that's going to work for you. If not, we do use the ESLint CLI under the hood. So most options that you can pass to ESLint, we can easily pass them through our builder, for our custom builder. So if you do find an option that's not there, either submit an issue, or if you want to submit a PR, it shouldn't be a difficult change just to pass an extra option from our builder to ESLint.
Great. Similar vein, George Susai asks why NX migration is not updating Angular CDK, Angular material. I would assume we'd want it to. If it's not working, George, if you could file an issue, that would be super helpful for us. Or even better, file in a PR to fix it. That would be great. But yeah, I'll look to bring this up to the NX team as well to at least make them aware that you mentioned this. So thank you for the comment. I think we answered this one. Any plans for native script or Ionic support in NX? There is, so we have been working on React Native, having some official support in NX. I'm not sure on the status on that, but I think we're pretty close to having that out. And maybe it came out with 11. Do you recall, Rarish?
I'm not sure. Yeah. I was gonna mention the XPlat utilities for native script. There's also Ionic. They also have like some schematics or generators for Ionic. And I was also gonna mention Devin's NX10's org on GitHub. So there's an Ionic React plugin and there's an Ionic Angular. And Devin's always making like really, really nice plugins. So yeah, I'll try to use those.
Devin, thanks so much for all the help and all the stuff you've been doing. Much appreciated, sir. And so yeah, thanks for the question, Vitaly. Let's see. This was a question. Our organization uses Azure Cloud. Obviously, it is very difficult to change that. But what does NX Cloud offer that is different? So I'm not super familiar with Azure Cloud. I know in terms of what NX Cloud offers, we are offering. I wouldn't think it would be in competition with Azure Cloud, but it would be a way of saying, let's make your builds faster. So rather than actually using Azure Cloud to like spin up an instance to build your application, instead you could just pull from NX Cloud's cache and say, well, in the case where you don't need to rebuild it, you could just pull the deliverable or the artifact from NX Cloud instead, and hopefully save on your cloud building costs. But I'm not sure what Azure Cloud is, so maybe I have the wrong assumption there. Rars, are you familiar with Azure Cloud?
Yeah, the same. Like I'm not sure exactly which project is Azure Cloud a separate project, or does it comprise like everything that it does in terms of cloud offering services? Because if it's the latter, then yeah, NX Cloud offers distributed caching, and it operates at the process level, and it speeds up your commands by caching your process outputs and your process like terminal outputs. So that it's its main offering, and it's also offering some extra analytics now in terms of how your NX commands are executing, how long they take, where are they failing, why are they failing. So that's kind of in a nutshell what NX Cloud offers.
Good deal. My good friend Evan Payne. Evan, nice to see you. He asks, is there a best practice around breaking the cache based on base level file changes, for example, tailwind.config? So yeah, Rars, do you want to provide an answer here?
So there is a way, I forgot what it's called. Like I always forget what it's called. In nx.json, you can.
I do too. That's why I pass it off to you.
There is an option for we can look for this and we can get back to you, but there is an extra option you can pass in to your nx.json runner config for NX Cloud that allows you to just break your cache based on anything you want. So for example, if you think your node version will have a significant impact on your build output or your test output, you can use this extra option, which I forgot what it's called, to just echo $node version. And then every time you run a command, it's first going to check if that specific environment variable has changed. So you do have access to that.
Yeah, I think that would probably be our best practice. And Evan, I'll reach out to you on what that property is when we can look it up.
Yeah, you can also select a specific file. You can use I think you mentioned the implicit dependencies in nx.json. So you can also use that to break the cache based on a specific file change. So you can say when this file changes, you can, if you do star, it's going to break the cache for all of the projects.
Yeah, and that's possibly what you want for Tailwind. Maybe if you have backend stuff, you wouldn't want to break those, but probably for everything in your front end, you probably want to go ahead and break cache based on a change like that, I think. but yeah, jumping into, I think this is our last question I'm seeing that we haven't addressed already. And I'll check the newer ones again in a second. Is there a way to configure NX for modular federation in Angular 11? As far as I'm aware, I don't believe we have anything for that right now. Raj, are you familiar?
Yeah, so I would recommend reading everything Manfred Steyer, if I pronounced his name correctly, like wrote on this. So he has a lot of good articles on there. I think if you look for module federation in Angular or Angular architects, you'll find his articles. But he also created a builder. I think it's under. Yeah, I'm not like if you look in. If you look on npm for module federation, you should be able to find his builder, and it essentially it's actually a schematic, so it allows you to create the if your workspace supports Webpack 5, it allows you to create it creates automatically for you all of these custom Webpack configurations, and it kind of guides you through how to set up module federation in your NX workspaces. So I did test it. It works really well. But like with everything micro frontends, you do want to be careful about, you do want to have to, you want to think hard about which libraries need to be shared, like core libraries and singletons, versus what libraries can be copied over to each instance of your frontends.
Good deal. I think that's all the questions. I saw, Zama, you had a similar question about module federation with React projects. I think some of Raj's answer is pertinent to that as well. Like that wouldn't be only for Angular, right? So yeah, if you want to do some sort of micro front end stuff where you're mixing Angular and React too, I feel like that would be about the same too. So yeah, and as Lars mentions, there's also a free ebook on module federations and other Angular project topics. So sounds like a good resource. I can't vouch for it myself because I haven't read it, but if Lars is recommending it and Raj is recommending it, then I would tend to trust it. I'll leave it at that. So yeah, thanks everyone for stopping by. Hopefully we answered your questions. If there's anything else, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter. Let me throw in my last dump of links for everyone to check out. So this is our Twitter account for NX. Feel free to ask us questions there. If you want us to address it, please ask it on the forum below, so that'll just help us compile things a little bit easier. But if you have something more pertinent, we can maybe answer questions or give us praise or whatever you want to do on Twitter. We're always appreciative for that. I'm going to throw up our GitHub as well. So if you want to check out our source code, see what all we're doing, or if you want to star it, we wouldn't mind that at all. So go ahead and check us out. If you're watching now, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube. That helps us out in terms of being able to focus more on content and stuff like that, like all the cool videos Raj is doing and stuff like that. Our community Slack is here. So if you're looking for some interaction about NX from the community, you can reach out there as well. And I'll throw the link to the forum in here too, as well. So yeah, thanks everyone for stopping by. And I hope you all have a great time.
Yeah, thanks, Zack. And thanks everyone for the really good questions.
Yeah, this was a fun episode. So thanks everyone. And yeah, hope you all have a great holidays or whatever you do in December where you're at. And we'll see you in 2021.